Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you. Today's episode, part 2 of the Colonial Swiss Master series, the Executive. Welcome to part 2 of the Swiss Master series, and today I will be talking about Colonial's Executive. Now, this knife was used by Colonial for a lot of things, including the Swiss Master series. I even seen one with imitation stag handles, but mostly I saw them being used for advertisements, like for Napa Auto Parts and gas stations and things of that nature. So the knife was used quite extensively by Colonial before and even after it entered into the Swiss Master line of knives. And it's actually a pretty good knife. The overall length of the knife is approximately, not the dishonest side, let's look at the honest side. The overall length is approximately 2 3/4 inches long. Man, for a moment it looked like a pretty big knife. What you have with it are two blades. You have a small pen blade and a larger spear blade. They're both on the same end, so it's set up like a jackknife, even though most people would consider this a pen knife. This blade is 1 inch long, this one 1 3/4 inches. And if you listen, it doesn't have too bad a snap. More importantly, despite this knife being from the 1970s and being used quite extensively, there's no wobble in that blade either. No wobble in this blade either. Still remained quite good with its snap and everything else, and I actually sharpened it up, and it does a pretty good job cutting still. So all in all, this little knife is a really nice handy knife for its size. It does use 420 steel in the blades, which I don't find a major problem for a little pen knife like this. It's not going to be doing heavy chores or anything, so 420 steel is probably fine for a knife of this size. Yeah, you could put better blades in it, but I don't think it really matters too much with a knife like this. And you do have to remember that this was always in Colonial's economy line. Okay, with that said, let's move on to the next step. So, what knife in the Victorinox line is the Executive supposed to be competing with? Well, if you take and open up the Classic SD, that's pretty close. You got a pen blade and a file, but you got a pen blade and a spear blade, but that's pretty close. Oops, I forgot. You also got a pair of scissors, so it's kind of a close but no cigar. It really doesn't compete with the Classic SD. So we can kiss that one goodbye. Well, what about this is the Executive? Well, Victorinox also has an Executive. Does it compete with the actual Victorinox Executive? Let's see. We got a pen blade, a spear blade. We got some kind of scraper. Oh, and we got a pen blade there. It's already kind of being outclassed. We'll close all those down, and what do we have on the other side? Oh, scissors. Oh, and a big honking file. So, no, the Executive cannot even come close to competing with the Victorinox Executive. Just totally in a different range entirely. So, what knife in the Victorinox line has a pen blade and a spear blade? There's only one that I know of, and that is the Pocket Pal. With the Pocket Pal, you end up with a pen blade and a spear blade, just like the Executive. Unfortunately, the Pocket Pal is on an 84 millimeter frame, so it's about 3 1/4 inches, and it really is a much larger, much sturdier knife than the Executive. It's also more expensive, but if anything, that's the closest living relative in the Victorinox line to the Executive. Now, with that said, what do I think overall of the Executive? I think it's a really good knife for what it is. It's a very small pen knife, very compact, under 3 inches long. The blades are excellent. The steel is adequate for what it is, and the fact that these blades are dropping into individual channels and working off of individual back springs, it just makes it a very tight, very snug little knife. And within the Swiss Master line, I think this just might be the best knife they have going. Okay, the following is just a very quick slideshow of the Executive compared to the Swiss Army knives. And with it, I will also give you the specifications. You may need to pause. I'm going to try and zip this through quickly. The Executive compared to the Pocket Pal, the closest living relative, I think, in the Victorinox line. The Executive compared to Victorinox's Executive, the one built on a 74mm frame. And the Executive compared to the Classic SD. So that was my thoughts on the Executive. What were your thoughts? Please share them in the comments below. As always, thanks for dropping by, and remember, you're only as sharp as your knife.